Okay, everyone. So hopefully you can hear me. If you are in the chat, if you can let me know. All right, good stuff, Milo. All right, let's get going. All right, so we're going to carry on with our sessions on how to write a perfect answer. And today we're going to look at another one, following on from the last one we looked at GCSE. Good stuff, guys. Perfect. You make sure you have got a pen and paper with you so you can make notes as you go along. All right, let's get cracking. So first one, just to remind you again that assessment objectives are really important, knowing them and understanding them, identifying the key elements in your exam question, understanding the structure of them, and then obviously we'll go through some examples in the answers. So to remind you again, assessment objectives are set by Ofqual, and they're all the same across all geography specification, all exam boards, and they're measured in 4 main ways. And the 4 are 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. 1 is a summary, remembering the key information from the GCSE topics that you've covered. These are really easy questions that you get. Assessment objective 2, where you've got to apply your understanding to something. Then assessment level 3, which is applying something, which is a little bit more challenging. And assessment level 4, which is you creating. So that tends to be a little bit more complex, and we'll look at those examples later on. So remember, with the assessment objective 1, command words you must know are state and describe. Those are the 2 most important ones. And explain, suggest, and discuss, or to what extent questions are generally assessment objective 2, 3, and 4 sort of questions. If you want me to go through more detail on these, if you go back to my previous live stream last week, you'll find a lot more detailed explanation for those. Today we're going to look at river landscapes, so explaining how flooding can be managed using hard engineering strategies. I'm just going to give you a quick 10 seconds, 15 seconds to just write the question down, and then we'll go through it together. Okay, let's carry on. Make sure you've taken a note of that. So these are the key words that I'd highlight in the question before answering the question. Explain how, so automatically we should be thinking assessment objective 2. Flooding, we should be thinking of some case studies that we may have studied, and we'll just be annotating them on top of the question. Managed, so what kind of measures do they put in place? And hard engineering strategies. So when you look at manage, you might think soft and hard engineering, but because the exam question is asking specifically hard engineering, you need to make sure that you apply those specific ones. So obviously, if you start talking about soft engineering strategies, you're not going to get many marks. Let's break this down into the assessment objectives. So number 1, for assessment objective 1 marks, you get 3 out of 6. And if you did 1 and then applied level 2 assessment objective, then you get an additional 3 marks. So this is what the exam boards would require you to do to get those 6 marks in total. So first of all, you need to describe the hard engineering strategy or strategies that you'll be talking about. You need to make some general links. If you're only getting a level 1, you'll make some weak links between strategy and flood management. And there won't really be much clear structure to your answer. So this is something that you would get from an assessment objective 1 answer. Now, to move that up to a level 2, to get the additional 3 marks, you need to talk about 2 strategies in total or more. So you could talk about 3, and you need to clearly develop them and link them to your answer. So there should be a clear structure, obviously, with this second part. And the way you can do that is making sure that you plan out what you're going to write before you start writing the answer. So make sure that you are highlighting the keywords from a question and making some annotations just above the question or below the question. And then that will give you some form of structure. And then you can think, right, in the first 2 or 3 lines, I might write that, and then follow that by another couple of points, and then so forth. Okay, so flooding can be managed using hard energy strategies with embankments. This is a sample answer that somebody's written. Let's have a look at this. Embankments are very large man-made objects with sides put alongside a river. This prevents flooding because when the water is rising, because of lots of reasons, the water will still be underneath in the river by the embankments and not flooding. So I'd like you to look at that answer very carefully. I'll give you a minute or so, read of it again, and then I'd like you to think about where you think this, how many marks this candidate would get. If you get ahead, you can just let me know in the chat what mark you think this answer deserves. So once you've had a read, just let me know if you think it's a level 1 or level 2 answer. Okay. Just wait for a couple more people to respond and then we'll move on. Yeah, good job, everyone. If you can just write down in the chat why you think it's a level 1, just very quickly, just very briefly. You're right, it is a level 1 answer. Any thoughts to why you think it might be a level 1? Okay, well, we'll come back to that then. Okay, because the points aren't linked, yes. It's not a good structure, definitely not a good structure to the answer. The points definitely aren't linked and it only mentions one strategy. Yeah, good job, well done guys. So let's move on. So if we're answering this question, you might want to break it down. If you're revising, this will be a really good thing for you to do. Obviously in the exam, this might be a little bit more difficult to do, you won't have enough time, but taking the time to answer the question in revision is always going to help you to formulate good answers and also then end up performing well on the tests as well. So I'd break it down into these sections through 3 columns. I just write down an example, a place that you may have studied, a hard engineering strategy that's been used there, and how they reduce or mitigate or stop the flooding. Now, you don't have to have 2 places, you can just have 1 place, and you might have 3 hard engineering strategies that they've used. And then very briefly describe what they did to help reduce or stop the amount of flooding occurring in that area. So very quickly, just like you to write down the template on your piece of paper, give you 30 seconds, just write those columns down, and then afterwards you can come back to it and review the answer very carefully. Okay, so hopefully that structure is good, helps you to break the question down a little bit more and to formulate your ideas before you start writing the answer. If you get into the habit of just practicing, breaking things down, and then writing afterwards, it will help you to structure your answer well too. Here's another answer. I'd like you to have a read through it and tell me whether it's a level 1 or a level 2 answer? Okay, guys, give you another 10 seconds. If you could just let me know in chat what you think this answer would get in the exam. Would it be a level 1 or a level 2? Okay, everyone. All right, so most people think it's level 2. It's not a level 2 answer. It's actually a level 1 answer. Okay, so here the question saying, the answer is saying flooding can be managed in hardened strategies such as dams, which can reduce the amount of water entering a river. Well, that's not true. And also that's very vague. That's not saying how it's being managed. Man-made tributaries may be made to divert the water to another river. Well, there is a specific name for those. That's not an example of a hard engineering strategy. And larger embankments can also be built to reduce the overflow of the river. I'm not sure how. It's not telling me how it's going to reduce it. So again, this would be a level 1 answer, not a level 2 answer. Okay, so it's really important that you pay attention to the how part of the question, because it's explain how flooding can be managed. Simply stating something, an example, and then not explaining how it actually reduces the flow or helps to manage a flood event is not going to get you a level 2 answer. So to be very, very careful when you're answering this. So here's an example of what I've broken down for this question. So for example, you may choose to do the Jubilee River in Maidenhead. And the hard engineering strategies that you could use, that have been used, are the flood relief channel. It's 11 kilometers long, and it reduced the risk of flooding for 3,000 homes. So I've got some facts down in there. The 11 kilometers long part isn't really that important, but could be helpful in description. And then I've written down, I think that the strategies used help to reduce it. So for example, here I've written down, it's a man-made river channel which bypasses an urban area. So the bypass part of this would help me to get some marks. The sluice gates can be opened to allow excess water to flow away into the relief channel. That's also something that's describing how it's actually doing the managing, and then elaborating on it by saying that thereby this reduces the threat of flooding. And that's just some rough ideas that I've just written down before I start answering the question. So let's move on. So for a level 1 answer, if I just wrote down the flood relief channel can be built, and one was built on the Jubilee River and the river is straightened, I'd probably only get level 1 for that, maybe to maximum 3 marks if I wrote that in the exam, or works to that effect. Words to that effect. A level 2, however, would be described or written in a bit more detail. So for example, 11 kilometer long flood relief channel was built on the River Thames near Maidenhead in Berkshire at times of high river flow. So it's talking about this is when a flood event could be occurring. The sluice gates can be open to allow the excess water to flow into the flood relief channel. That's showing me how it's actually reducing or how it's being managed, the flood event. This management strategy has reduced flooding for over 3,000 properties. Okay, so it's showing me how it's being managed and how it helps the people that are surrounding it. Okay, so just have a quick read of that again. I'll just give you 30 seconds, and then we will go on to the next point. So remember, basic statements get you basic level marks. Elaboration on the how part is going to get you, the explanation part is going to show your ability to demonstrate that you understand what the purpose of that specific management strategy was. Okay, so when you're answering this question, make sure that you are explaining in logical steps, you apply your knowledge and understanding, and you must address the question through a well-developed and well-written answer. Now, I've given you a framework of the things that you could write. This is not obviously an answer. You'd have to then construct this using this information, and this would help you to get 6 marks. So I would suggest that you write your answer to this question very carefully, and then you can come back to this video, review the low-level answers, compare it to your own version, look at the levels and how you'd get the marks, and then look at my breakdown for level 1, level 2 answer, and that will help you to figure out whether you have hit the level 2 or not. Remember, the key to doing well, everyone, is to practice writing. You must practice, annotate the question before answering the question, read newspaper articles as often as possible, or even just read your textbook, but then don't just read it and leave it there. Read it and try to reapply what you're learning from the textbook in your own words. Write in third person. So for example, the most critical factor appears to be ... Write. Now, this is the most important thing. Most students forget this. You need to write your answer as if you are speaking with authority. Now, what that means is that the person that you're speaking to knows nothing about the topic that you are talking about. And it's really, really important that you do that. You all know the information. You just need to show it off to the examiner. And obviously, write clearly and neatly every single time. And you can do that by just planning out your answer very carefully in advance. Right, make sure you've written down today's question and answer the question for next week. Next week, we're going to go on to looking at some more examples of exam questions that can come up and how you can write even better than you have done so in the past. If you've got any questions, let me know very quickly in the chat box. Absolutely, you can definitely go ahead and use the case study that I've outlined in the presentation today. Good job, guys. Let me know if there's anything that you want specifically done, but I look forward to seeing you guys next week.